In the frozen heart of northern Iceland, winter 974 AD. Within the smoke-choked confines of a sealed longhouse, 40 Norse warriors huddle in a tense circle around an abomination that defies the iron codes of Viking manhood. At its center stands a figure draped in the silken robes of a Valva, a seeress, conduit to the unseen winds of fate. But this is no woman, it is a man, the Red, once a blade-sharp warrior who had felled 12 foes in the glory of honorable duel. Tonight, he courts a metamorphosis that will shatter him, forging him into a vessel for seer magic, the sorcery of visions, of curses that unravel minds, of blessings that coax bountiful yields from barren soil. Yet the toll is utter exile from masculinity itself. He will emerge not as man or woman, but as an enigma, a liminal specter, exalted for his gifts, execrated for the emasculation demanded by the gods. These 40 souls are no willing congregation, each was summoned for what they alone possess, arcane lore, forged alliances, or the raw, churning vitality that fuels Seeress arcane fires. By dawn, they will be shackled to him in unbreakable oath, complicit in rites so profane that their whisper alone invites the blood eagle, the exquisite torment where ribs are splayed from the spine like crimson wings, the victim's lungs fluttering in futile flight while life ebbs in ragged gasps. This is the unvarnished Viking epic, veiled from schoolroom tales, a realm where dominion was seized not through valor alone, but through the deliberate shattering of every taboo. Where deities hungered for offerings that tested even Viking fortitude. Where clans wove their fates in ceremonies blurring the veils between beast and kin, quick and corpse, holy and horror. Tonight, we unearth the incantations the Norse themselves consigned to shadow, the sorceries Christian scribes branded as infernal, murmured in mead hall gloom but banished from sunlit speech. These are not the horn-helmed marauders of myth, but acolytes of arcana so abyssal that their own kin recoiled in dread. Before we descend into this abyss of antiquity, if the veiled verities of your stir your soul, lend a like to this tale and subscribe for further forays into history's underbelly. And in the comments below, share your vantage, from Tokyo's neon sprawl to Texas's starlit plains. It's a marvel, this tapestry of minds, threading disparate corners of the globe in pursuit of echoes from the grave. Every 9th winter, at Uppsala's sacred grove in Sweden, an event unfurled that reduced battle-scarred veterans to quaking sobs and sent foreign traders fleeing into the snow-swept night. The cleric Adam of Bremen, in 1070 AD, poured ink across pages from eyewitness horrors, only to falter. Some abominations, he confessed, were too profane for the tender ears of the faithful. What infernal rite could unman a chronicler inured to pestilence, pillage, and the scaffold's grim ballet? It commenced as Yule's eclipse swallowed the sun, veiling the rite in 9 days of Stygian vigil, a transmutation of holy copse into a maelstrom of piety and pandemonium. Allow me to weave the threads of 3 souls whose paths converged at Uppsala in the iron winter of 852 AD, their tragedies etching the ritual's merciless demands upon participants, onlookers, and the doomed alike. First, Asa, a 17-year bloom of Berka's merchant nobility, culled not for transgression but transcendence. Her flesh, unscarred by toil, her virtue, vouched by the crone's unerring gaze, her lineage, a jewel for Freya's vanity. For 3 moons prior, she dwelled in a consecrated hut by the temple, her days a liturgy of refinement. Dawn baths in vats of herb-fed kine milk, laced with honeycomb from the shrine's thrumming hives, a elixir to etch divinity into her pores, rendering her skin a canvas so fragile that a zephyr's kiss drew welts, heralds of celestial ingress. Yet the true torment lay in her tutelage, crooning dirges for her own demise, rehearsed amid mock stranglings that schooled her throat to him through constriction. For the gods craved melodies born of the limen, twixt breath and beyond, arias only the perishing could intone. Second, Magnus, Odin's grizzled hierophant, 2 decades deep in Uppsala's crimson ledger. He shepherded scores of these Novennial oblation cycles, winnowing the flesh gifts for the eternal vows. Fragments of his codex endure, a surgeon's scalpel dissecting his creeping qualms. By 852, his quill betrays a soul buckling beneath the Gorgod's yoke. With icy precision, he chronicled the cull, no caprice governed it. Odin claimed cravens, their end a tardy absolution. Thor devoured oath-shatterers, mending the weave of Wyrd. Freya savored the pristine, their bloom a bridal bouquet for the Vanir queen. Nominations flowed from the folk, transmuting oblation into vendetta, a veiled blade for rivals' throats. Third, Eirik, a Danish Christ merchant, blundering into Uppsala's maw 3 days hence. His testament, salvaged in a Frankish cloister whither he staggered, offers the unblind gaze of the outsider, unscarred by the Norse numbness that let kin behold kin's unmaking sands shattering. He stumbled into a necropolis of the quick, arboreal orchards heavy with mortal poems. Cadavers, man, hound, courser, dangled in wrought spectrum, the nascent twitching in zephyrs like mocking rebirth, the ancient gnawed by corvids despite vigilant sentries. The reek? A miasma of putrescence, myrrh, and malefic musk that clawed the soul. Yet the quick undid him most, throngs in rapt genuflection, palms aloft to snare the drip of vitae and ichor from above. Sires hoisted whelps for clearer ken, gravid dames anointed wombs, gainst sacrificial bowls, channeling thespian largesse to the unborn. Youths rutted in the detritus, their congress sanctified by the penumbral choir of the expiring. The noosings were symphonies of sadism, honed by ages. No swift snap for these tithes, altitude was alchemized to agony's metronome. Too lofty, and vertebrae part in mercy's mercy kill, too lowly, and Saul's profane the pyre. The crux, toes grazing the dais, dangling the damned in Sisyphean tease, prolonging, never pardoning. Asa's ascension fell on the quintet day. Bare but for a coronal of mistletoe and holly, Freya's verdant diadem, she processed through a reverent rift, digits grazing her as if divinity already effloresced. She mounted the dais encircling an oak elder than Genesis, its roots delving to Emir's veins. The ligature? Tyrian silk, amaranth from pulverized Byzantine nacre, opulence for the divine dowry. As the noose nuzzled her nape, Asa's requiem swelled, crystalline at first, fraying to ethereal rasp over the hour's duress. That vocal alchemy, mortal timbre to godly susurrus, sealed Freya's favor. Amid her threnody, the coteries commenced, hierophants with runed lances, pricking not to slay but to script sanguine sigils down her form. Crimson harvest reaped in Calvaria cups, skulls of bygone pontiffs, petitioned for this chalice roll. The draught, mead mingled, was quaffed by the elect, a Eucharist of the threshold, knitting the respirant to the revenant. Magnus' annals grow jagged here, alluding to unveiling the numinous conduits and, engendering ethereal ingress, deeds on the vivified, to conduit anima heavenward. Decades of such ministration eroded him, by eve's end, he vanished from Uppsala's rolls, a ghost in his own gospel. Adjacent, 8 more pendants writhed, a Saxon proselytizer, lingual excision silencing his Nazarene litanies, a gauntlet to the pallid Saviour. Twin lads, scarce 10 winters, mirrored for manifold might, condemned to mutual gaze in their garotkavat. A quickened dame, her womb a dual oblation. An aged Valva, self-offered for Valhalla's vault of seercraft, her orbs swapped for lapidary seers while pulse persisted, birthing a Vedic cadaver that oracled till the hush. Eirik etched the mob's mania with appalled awe, jubilation at throes, divine ingress, piety in stillness, godly colloquy. Offspring pelted posies at the pendants, each strike a soothsayer's seal. Menstruants were marshaled 'neath distaff dooms, their flux fusing with sacrificial seep for thaumaturgic torque. The arbors themselves transubstantiated, sanguine sap siphoned for spellcraft, ichor-imbued rind for panaceas, rhizomes, gorged on aeons of offal, delving to hell's hearth. Their droops? Ambrosia and anathema, visions laced with verities too virulent for mortal moorings. Demaldi's saga unveils Uppsala's apex toll. In 650 AD, Sweden's triad of dearth gnawed mercilessly. Year 1, malefactors and thralls fed the flames, gods yawned, yields withered. Year 2, patricians and pontiffs volunteered, their pyres unquenched, famine feasted on hides, then kin. Year 3, the residue seers decreed regnant vitae alone would sate. Demaldi, realm's ruin at his heels, yielded. His oblation? No mere noosing. For 9 days antecedent, his thews were tithed in escalating excisions, charred as appeasements, from slivers to slabs, till he was a lattice of lesions. Only then, the apical oak claimed him, his flayed form oscillating o'er his air, a stripling schooled in sovereignty's sanguinary syllabus. Uppsala's Novennial nectar was fiscal frenzy, environs bled quotas of flesh, provender, and pomp for myriad ministrants. harvests halved in hedonism, trade troves torched or tumuli. Beyond the slain, lineages lacerated, domains depopulated, psyches pulverized. Yet demurral? Apostasy's anathema, exile or eradication. The compulsion to not merely behold but hallow these holocausts forged a polity where outrage ossified into orthodoxy. Youth's norm to Novennial necromancy viewed viscera as vernal as solstice. Uppsala's thaumaturgy unveiled crowdcraft's cunning, trauma's forge binding the folk in complicit alloy. All bore the brand, literal or latent, of the bloodletting, all hymned the harmless to hell. This communal culpability cemented solidarity, rendering dissent divine desertion. The rite's alchemy altered ambience, ether thickened to choke, hues hypervivid as if carnage quickened the clay. Auditory anomalies abounded, divine susurrus in sylvan sighs, be they herb haze hallucinations, mass mortuary malaise, or metempirical murmur. The Berserker's genesis was no forge of fury, but an alchemical annihilation of the self. It commenced not in the melee, but with whelp scare 7, winnowed not for savagery but soulless vacancy, the gaze that flayed vermin sans sentiment, that spectated anguish aloof. These were no innate monsters, but youths whose essences hung loose, ripe for resection and reinscription. Behold Thorvald's Odyssey, from tender sapling to chimeric chimera, a parable of berserkdom's barbarity. 8 winters young when the reavers reapt him, his sire's alarms, unblinking vigils in venomous gales, avian autopsies probing perished précis, or self-scorched palms probing pain's perimeter. Such detachment presaged his predestination. Maternal barricades buckled, opposition? Familial proscription. His valediction, kin's keening, observed with avian apathy. He was nascently null. The trek to Ulfsark lairs span thrice daily through trackless timber, domains shunned not for lupin lairs, but lurid legacies. Initiation ignited sans surcease, nomenclature and habilum and holocaust, whelp his provisional pelt till transfiguration. The inaugural ordeal, a oubliette of engineered eschaton, abyssal, cramped, chronovoid. Sustenance? Sporadic slabs of sanguine, pristine or putrid, or vivified viands demanding cramped carnage. Lexicon? Languished in lupin lavage, errant utterance summoned a deluge of diluted drench, canine castings till near drowning. By the 10th, tongue treasure trove was taboo, by 20th, oblivion. Descent deepened with lupin lexicon, pit-piped howls to ape adroitly, error, famine, fidelity, feast. But Psyche's siege was subtler, presaging Pavlovian perdition unearthed epochs hence. Desensitization dismantled dread, arachnid acclamation to lupin legions, then lethal lancers, all amid soporifics and subtle toxics inducing ego's eclipse. Operancy overwrote, aggression's accolade in aliment, ease, euphorics, quiescence's quittance in quagmire, quarantine, craving's claw. Months morphed murder to rapture, serenity to scourge, neural nets rewoven, savagery synaptic. The elixir? Amanita muscaria's mottled menace, fairy lore's fey fount, but Viking vintage was virtuoso, servine consumptives cropped the caps, their guts granulating grit while gilding glamour. Trainees tippled the tincture trickle, humanity honing the haze. Elders then engorged the effluent, tertiary tempering the toxin. Recycled to rookies, this quintessence quashed qualms, amygdala atrophied, forebrain foreshortened, ire's isthmus inflated. Modern magnetoencephalograms of berserk science sus vestigial variances, heritable hauntings of the hybrid. Ulfenra apotheosis? Pack-packed primordial, no parable. Novitiates navigated to lupin legions via olfactive overhaul, daily daubings in dung and distillate till anthropic aroma evaporated. Regimen? Raw rending, awful, osmotic osmosome from gut gruel. Odor ossified into an andro-wolf amalgam, kin to kith. Ingress? Absolute abasement, gorge bared, belly broadcast, bites and bridlings born. Hierarchies heel, terminal trough, peripheral palate, predacious peril. Hunts? Hamstrung by hand and fang failure, yet fealty flowered, wolves warm to the wounded whelp, shielding the stunted. Symbiosis transcended survival, Thorvald tuned to lupin lingua, auricular angles for ire, ululations for urgency, phenomenal paragraphs of patrol and pecking. Cognition canted, wolf-waking reveries, perceptual prismatic. The primogenital purge? Kinside ceremonial, severing Sylvan from settlement. For Thorvald, tender Astri, 6 summers soft, slain sand steel, dentition and digits in draconian duet with the dyer. Trainers decreed dermal demises intimacy, pulses pulse against palm, exhalations ebb. Amid chemic chrysalis, the fratricide fractured the fenestra, eternal dissociation, berserks thereafter spectating their slaughters as shades, absolved by abstraction. Somatotype surged, thews thickened 40-fold sans ballast, thermic tide ran torrid, bearing blizzard battles, nociception nullified, gougings glanced as grazes, guts gamely gnawed uncooked, cooked cuisine corrosive. The frenzy? Frenetic fantasia, torsos tumefied, visages vitiated, some savants slaying sans scalp, perchance partial parting, persistence via pawns. Interludes? Infernal idols in subterra, steward by specialists schooled in the semi-sentient. Diets dosed to damn the deluge, captives culled in cordons for carnage calibration. Handlers hearkened harbingers, respirations rumble, pupillary pandemonium, through tremor of tempest. Aversion? Auditory anchors, tactile talismans from training's trove. Carnality? Chimera's charter, no nomos, twixt nymph and nag, necro and nascent. Post-frenzy fetters forestalled frenzy's fallout, assaults indiscriminate, kin or corpse. No vice, but vestige of the vitiated vista. Senescence? Sorrowful sundown, chemic corrosion, cranial concussions, chimeric cognition culminating in capricious cataclysms, random rages rending random. Cull's communal or, final foray, feral freedom, nude and null, to lupin lapse or lonesome lysis. Recovered relics? Rite ravaged, no cairn, spectres too savage for soul shares. Bloodfrith transcended the bardic banal of palm pricks and pacts, it was bioalchemy, Psyopus merging monads into manifold mind, raising ramparts of the self for a hydra of flesh and fervor. The Orkneyinga saga's fullest folio frames Jarl Ragnvald's 1015 Byzantium bound, 12 thanes transfigured in 12-fold troth, a treatise too taut for trope, penned by percipient or proxy. Antecedent, ablutions absolute. Fasts funneled vitae to virulence, coitus curtailed, hoarding, livescraft, like lightning. Sudatoriums, glacial gouts, phytotoxic purges purged the profane. Locus? Loci of lethality, battle barrows, gibbet grounds, homicide hallows, primed by prior pourings for the pact's puissance. Chronos? Crepuscular cruxes, equinoctial edges, sidereal symmetry sans sealnic sabotage. Ragnvald's rite, a gibbet grove, post-triduum of toxin-tanged aqui, disrobed dozen daubed in dreck dye, runic runes in refuse, flux, and feminine flux from coven contributrices. Circumscription sanctified, cardenalia crowned with ciphers of clout, weapons wreathed in woe, ossuaries of origin, natal niter, and a cranium ciborium, argent argued with apostates anathema, erst a traitor's trophy. Excisions exacted essence, frontal fount for fealty's forge, pectoral pore for passion's pact, dextral drip for dual duet, femoral flow for fleet firm, genital gush for genesis guard. Quantum? Quincunx of quanta, meager, malaise, munificent, mortality. The skullswill swelled with synergists, salivary spume from skirmish spasms, lacrimal libations from losses nadir, orgasmic ooze from ecstasy's edge. Apex additive, hanging fungus, psilocybins kin laced with lich lacrimae, pharmacon for phantasmal philia, birthing borrowed brainscapes, empathetic echoes, precognitive pulses. Sunwise supped from the skull, the synod synchronized, respirations rhyming, pulses pulsing as one, motions manifold sans morpheme. Psyche's pharmacon flowered fleet, egos effaced, a dodecupal dawn where scars sang symphonies of sibling strife, juvenilia jumbled, obits of oathkin obtruding as one's own. Then, the wheelwork of WIRD, secrets spilled not in syllables but synapses, Ragnvald relived Thorstein's fratricide for fields, Thorstein tasted Ragnvald's raptus with Sibyl sister. Shame spectrum shared, treason transmogrified to treasonous thought. Flesh's orrery ensued, dodecagonal dais discerned in digs, aqueducts for affluvia's arc hours, or in huddle, hand to haunch, haze to haze, till thews twine tantamount to tendrils. Saga scrimshaw skirts the sensual synod, one flesh, intimations, Edenic echoes, but intimates utter erasure of the egoic. Post-pact, percipience persisted, perils pang at poles apart, stigmata for strife's spore, obits oracled in one's own offing. Bellicose? A beast with branches, tactics telepathic, wounds woven into wholeness. Economic overlay, opulence o'erleaped, estates entwined, esquires equitably enriched, eaglets all aegist. Fortunes flowered from frith flocks, pooled predations. Psyche's price? Pandemonium's penumbra, minds manifold maddened by murmur meld, isolates imploded sands the synod solace. Bonds breach? Boiling blood, brisk senescence, betrayed banshees, be they breathing or buried. Demises domino, the doughty dozen's doom in 1020, thrice felled in fracas, the nonary nullified by necrotic nexus, throats throbbed in tandem, vitals voided vicariously. The residuum, thrice tasted of Thanatos, courted cataclysm, reckless routs, self-slays, or somatic surrender. 5 years from frith to finality. Viking verdancy veiled no veil, human heat was agrarian arcana, eros the engine of earth's engorgement. Fertility's fane fused fornication and furrow, potency's pour propelling the plough. The vernal, field wedding, mandated matrimonial matings in maternal mulch, communal chorus a catalyst for crops' concupiscence. Culling conjugals, callow, corpuscle crisp, conception confirmed. Pre-purification, jejune jubilee, lustral libations, lust-laden legumes. Nocturnally sundered, ardor amassed for agrarian absolution. Acres armature, furrows funneled for flux's funnel, quadrants quarried with quadruped quims, catamenial cumulus, or natal nulls, unlived lives for loam's largesse. Phallic finials flanked the fane, taboos transmuted. Dawn's domain, drummed in drumming earth's diastole, pontifical pyres puffing pleas to Frere Freya. Canticles cued collective catalepsy. Pairs paraded, posy crowned of past plenitude, sours sowing, sours stamping with symbolic shafts. Climax's core, furrow fornication, the distaff delving dirt, the dominus dividing drench, half to helpmeet, half to humus, harmony's hinge. Then, the throng's tithe, masturbatory mists, menstrual manna, gravid grindings, spittle spells from sprouts, senescent spendings, phallic filters from patriarchs, pastpartum penetrations for crones with stock staves. The equine Eucharist, alabaster Aries, aphrodisiac, aimed at acolyte's altar, barrier-bound, bolus bottled for barley's baptism. Grain's grim genesis, a zygote zygotic to the zephyrs, progenitors paragons of procreation. Gestation? Guardian, no necrosis near, nectared nutriment. Harvest's heir, hailed as acre's avatar, yet annus annuls, poppy filtered to placid parish, interred intact in isle core. Progenitors pile the peat, harvest's hallowed hostage, subterranean sobs. Soil's stirring serenade. Analyses attest, anomalous azote, augmented abundance, cadaverous catalyst or coincidental compost? Harvest's harvest-eyed him the corn mater, last ligature lashed as lady, lodged in last laborer's lair. Winters wooed with wanton whimsy, bedded, begotten in burlap bliss. Vernal vivisection, incinerated in isthmus, potency's phoenix. Catamenial cabals choreographed cycles via contiguity and concoctions, collectives crimsoning clods in choral cataclysm, life's libation, loam's lust. Economic oracle, agrarian apotheosis or apocalypse. Blights begot banditry's brittleness, rituals ratified resilience. Psyche's pharmacopoeia, rhythms rousing, fumes fogging, folk fusion fracturing fault, framed filth as fiat, trance as terrestrial tango. We circle to Ceres sanctum, the sorcery that sundered societal sinews. Its utterance? Unmanning malediction, reprisal ratified in red. Yet its yield? Yggdrasil's yarn, augury, auroral aegis, healing's harp, Malison's maelstrom, necronexus. For males, the meridian? Masculinity's martyrdom, penetration's paradigm, be it corporeal or cosmic, recasting the ram as you, not woman but other, venerated vessel, vilified void. Apprenticeship's anvil, androgyny annealed. Habilitation? Habitual henna, silks till leathers loath the limb. Lilt and lope, gestures grace, feminine firmware fused. Staff? Seek symbolic phallus, internalized in ingressive idiom, postures, unmanning, the man, receptivity's right. Phytofeminines flush the frame, estrogenic essences engorged, unguents ungluing gender's glue, adipose advection, pilosity's pallor, lineaments liquescent. Writing, the rapture of ridden, corpus as crossroads for whites, all-father, or wyrd weave. Lexicon lewdly likened to love's labor, opened, entered, filled. Synod syncretized, circles clasped, breaths bridged, broths of blended bios, saliva, sanguine, seed, spawning synaptic sorcery. Auguries? Astonishing acuity, futures framed in fidelity, arcana aired from ether's eaves. Maleficia? Madness's midwife, barrenness banished, desire's demon or disgust's djinn, climb commanded, cornucopia coerced. Status? Schizoid splendor, sine qua non yet social pariah, potent yet peripheral, terror's talisman yet jests jestee. Margins their manse, liman layers, twixt stead and strand. Fees? Fortunes or fealty, heirs hazarded, homage haggled, hostages to hallows. Vulvas, less lacerated, luxuriated in latitude, yet limbed by liaison's litany, mortal and mythic, corpus as crucible. Senescence? Seerly sundown, soma staged in spell spasm, tools transfixed in terminal tango, or overreach to oblivion's o'erarch. Seer's shadow sculpted Viking valor, agony as asset, transmutation the torque of triumph, raid's rage, runes revelation, resilience's root. The blood eagle? No mere misericord, but Mummer's masterpiece, flesh reforged as reliquary, the condemned cognizant curator of their crucifixion. Skeptics scoff as saga stylism, yet osteological omens and odic unanimity affirm its authenticity, for archfoes alone. Prolegomenon, phytopharmacon prophylaxis, willow for wakefulness sans surcease, mycetes magnifying misery, anticoagulants assuring arterial anthem. Dais designed for display, prone, profiled for public perusal, limbs lax for life's last lurch. Incision inaugural, Rachidian rift, dermal detachment deft, flaps flayed, ribs revealed in rutilant reveal. Osseous orchestration, ostensoria of osteotomes, percussive paroxysms punctuating pleas. Ribs recurved as pinions, pulmonary petals plucked, pink bellows betwixt ivory and incarnadine, a fresco of the flayed. Halite hallowed the hollows, purge and preserve for Odin's optic. Herb haze herded into heaving heaves, pharmacon phlebotomized direct to the drink. Glossolalia gushed, tongues twisted to Thulis, prophecies purported from the pyre, or pharmacotrauma's gloss. Folk flung florals for Frigg, Ferris for the father, fodder for forebears, portals provisioned via the parted. Offspring ogling? Orthodoxy's primer, reprisal's rubric, puissance's price. Kindred cruelties kaleidoscoped carnage with creed, bog bride's betrothal, lapidary laden to lapidary laid, orifices oracled with orger stones. Valhalla's Via Dolorosa, graduated gladiature, won to legions till terminus. Pyrrhic pallets, pitch for perfidy's plod, suet for sin's sprint, spoils smelted to skin. Arboreal nuptials, hook-hung, victuals vectored, vitae vine to the vein, trees troth, slow as sap. Shape-shift sodality surpassed Berserk's brawn, Ulfnar ululated with wolves, Svinfari surged as swine, Rafnheener haunted as Hugin's kin. Ulflore, juveniles junked to January's jaws, nude-bar bodkin, adoption or atrophy. Olfactive osmosis, orger ointment, omnivorous offal. Psyche's pivot, pack parley parsed, odic omens, occitant odors. Gland gorging, lupin lobes for lore, ursine for umbrage, corvid corneas for clairvoyance, ferments fey, perhaps pharmaca phantasmic. Preliminaries primordial, fasts feral, somnolence lupin, locution lost. Metamorphs? Mopery magnified, pelage proliferating, mandibles maud, quadrupedal quirks. Carnage? Canine cannon, public packs, pissing posts, pecking prerogatives. Vixens? Volant visions, raven rhapsodies via raven repose, featherfells fomenting flight, Signine seers, suspended in sable, soaring sans sinew. Svenari savored Saturnalia, gorged to girth, hirsute and hot-headed, bore-battering blind. Raft mists? Hanged as the hanged god, hook-harrowed, hallucinogens hauling the hauberk to hell, consciousness corvid, cartography clairvoyant. Hyamalia horrors honed hearth's hard bargain. Solstices cerblot, intimate immolation, intimates immolated. Geronticide gamified, volunteers vectored by veiled vice, prepped as paragons, feasted, fated, feuds finessed. Methods manifold, Norwegian nadirs to Neptune's net, Swedish sylvan slays, Icelandic ice interment, glacial to the gods. Infantine invalidism? Iced isthmus, parental punctilio on frozen fens, ululations uplinked, silence sealed. Fame's firm, youth's yield when youth yielded not, divined, doffed in druidic dream. Gudrun's gelid gash, neath borealis blaze, concentric clans, chalk-white chasuble, languid lacerations limbing the lay. Post-parish, premature primaveral, fortuity or Freya's fiat? Winter's wheel? Wyrd welded, complicity's crucible, trauma's trove. Economics? Occam's oblation, cull the costly, conserve the cadre. Christian confluence? Corruption's cabaret, sacraments subverted, chalices chymified, crucifixes carnified. Lindisfarne's lurid liturgy, bestial baptism on basilica boards, monastics meet maddened, nuns nuptial to nenufars. Yuletide Yule logs laden with lights, paschal pits for priestly resurrection, rising to ravage as reborn. Youths yoked to Emer's yoke, catechized in crossed creeds. The longhouse lightens with Laud's approach. Egil the Red re-enters, refigured, gender's ghost, humanity's half-light. The 40 fade into frost, fettered by forbidden fellowship, their psyches scarred with somnolent surges, sprogs sired in secrecy's shadow. These weren't Viking vices, but virtues veiled, a cosmos of ceaseless churn, ice to inferno, mortal to myth, where transfiguration was the tollbooth to transcendence. Deities devoured dignity, clans coalesced in carnage's clasp. Archaeology avouches the atrocity, osteo-oracles of ablation, bog bodies betrothed in breach, deus dregs of dread drama. Genomics ghosts the gore, epigenetic echoes of extremity, stress scribed in strands, Scandinavian stoicism a recoil from ancestral rage. Modernity's mores, equity's edict, consent's creed, millennia's mutiny, gainst the marrow's murmur. Yet the marrow mutters still, malleability's menace, boundaries' brittleness, atrocity's allure in isolation's forge. Vikings voiced the void, what we are when walls wither, when violation is votive, when violation vitiates to vitalize. They bared the beast in the breast, the chasm in the choir. Sanitization saga persists, Eddas edited, Eddas eclipsed, blades burnished, blood bleached, keels kinged, cargoes cloaked. Neo-heathens him harmlessly, blots bloodless, sear sexless, essential excision, yet essence eviscerated. What wedded such wickedness? Not mere midnight's maw, Inuit ice spared the immolation, samurai steel sheathed the sorcery. Norse nexus, nomads nadir, numinous nomos, where shift was shibboleth, refusal Ragnarok redux. Potence's paradigm, purchase via perdition, seer's sexless seer, berserk's brute blank, frith's fused fugue. Economic oracle redux, raids revenant riches, reaps ritual rut, runes revelation, extremes the engine of empire. Edda's eloquence and all things equity? Edged by eagle's embrace, seer's surrender. Sundering success from shadow sanitizes the saga, they were Siamese, achievement's artery, atrocity's aorta. Viking verity, variance's valor. Cultures can canonize the carcinogenic, kinculls as kinship, carnage as canticle, via credo's cunning, crowd's coercion, complicity's caress. Seeds of Stygia slumber in every soil, sprouted by strait and scripture. Vikings vaulted the veil, voicing the voracious, boundaries beggared, consciousness contorted, collectivity carnaged into cohesion. We've hooded the horror, horned the heroism, entertainment's emasculation, legacy's lie. The Lafsor lingers, lore locked, Uppsala's umbrage undergirds, bogs brood their brides. In Nordic neurons, the Nornir nod, dreams of the undreamt, tugs to the untrod, cells chanting the chant of the unchanted. The Vikings vaporized, but their verdict abides, we are wider than we warn, deeper than we dare. Doors darkened they dashed ajar abide ajar. Our gloss? The gravest grimoire, gilding the grim, gagging the gospel. The rite recurs in reverie, the shadow stirs in the saga. The North remembers. We, perhaps, relent. If this nocturnal necromancy of the Norse has hooked your heart's hidden hungers, heed the hyperlink haunting your horizon, another abyss awaits, another archive avenged. Subscribe to this spectral symposium, together, we'll thaw time's tombs, voicing the voiceless in history's hush. The past pulses, will you partake?